Thanks everyone for attending Simplify Data Loss Prevention with Google Workspace. And thanks for joining us again. I know Jay was here last time, so thank you for coming back. We're excited to have you again. We'll move on to the next slide and introduce everyone. So my name is Emily Truffles, and I'm the Marketing Communications Manager here at Wursta. I'd also like to introduce Patrick Della Peruta, Director of Technology, and Chris Hopkins Ward, Cloud Consultant, who will be leading the discussion for today. This meeting is being recorded, and all registrants will receive a link to view it later. We ask that you stay on mute and submit your questions through the chat feature of the Meet. We'll have a time at the end to answer any questions that you have. And we'll move on to that next slide to tell you a little bit about Wursta before we get to the main event here. Wursta is a premier Google Cloud partner focused on collaboration design. It is our mission to help companies maximize their use of the cloud. This helps organizations develop cultures of continuous innovation powered by real-time collaboration. Wursta is the go-to partner for growth-minded companies. We offer support across Google's products and managed services, ranging from Google Workspace migration to custom app development and collaboration design workshops. So with that, I will pass it on to Patrick.
Thank you very much, Emily, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for joining us here today. And for those of you who joined us a couple weeks ago, thanks for joining us again. My name is Patrick Della Peruta. I'm the Director of Technology, or a Director of Technology here at Wursta. Have 12 plus years experience working within the Google Apps, G Suite, now Workspace environment, and 20 years in total working in technology. And happy to be talking with you all today about a very important topic within, not only within Workspace, but within IT in general, and it's data loss prevention. With the world that we live in now and workforces working from home, it is now more important than ever to control the data that your users are creating and sharing and collaborating on, which brings us to the topic of today and DLP, or data loss prevention. And we're thinking about DLP or talking about DLP, it really breaks down into three pillars. Discovery and classification, determining what's important to your organization to discover, to block, to warn against, to redact if necessary, anonymization, or the action of sanitizing your data, or breaking a link between a set of data and who that user is. So a set of addresses and a set of names, separating those out. And then risk analysis, determining what is and what is not allowed. Is this level of sharing okay for this purpose? Putting controls in around that. So we'll talk about each of these and a little bit about why it's important for your organization to implement data loss prevention within your organization.
Yeah, Patrick, I can jump in there. Hey, everybody. My name is Chris Hopkins Ward. I am a change management consultant here at Wursta. And honestly, things like DLP, I don't really have a lot of experience in. So correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, from what you just explained. Basically, you want to use DLP to help a company understand and manage their sensitive data, right? So for like data compliance officers or data engineers or even like academic researchers, these are all people who need help to ensure compliance and policies and regulations are set up the way they need to, right?
That's exactly right, Chris. Well said.
Okay, cool. I think I understand pretty well. And that reminds me, Patrick, you know how you were so incredibly helpful with me 2 weeks ago, how you helped me find my lost phone?
Yes, you didn't lose it again, did you?
No, haha, good one. No, I haven't lost my phone again. Thank you very much. I've been very careful going to Chipotle now. But for the record, you really did help me 2 weeks ago with my phone, with mobile device management. And that was a really great informative call. And I'm sure people listening might want to rewatch that call or watch it if they haven't seen it. And so someone just popped it into the chat. So that's great. So you can check it out. But I have another problem that I'm hoping that you can help me with, Patrick.
I will do my best. What's up?
Okay, so this is embarrassing, yada, yada, sure. But I have to admit that I woke up in a really cold sweat this morning. I had a stress dream, or it was more like a nightmare, and I was tossing and turning. Okay, basically, this sounds crazy, but my credit card and my social security number, they were people in my dream, and they were partying, and they were going back and forth to these different parties all around the world. Like one of them was on a cruise, and another went to they watched a Broadway show, and people were asking them what their name was, and they were just telling them, "Oh, it's my social security number. Oh, it's my credit card number," and I couldn't control it, and so I got really stressed out that my numbers and all my sensitive data are somewhere on our accounts, just free flow and just being able to go anywhere they want. So I'm hoping you can help me out and de-stress me today. Can you do that?
I can. Take a deep breath, calm down, don't stress.
I can't.
I'm actually a step ahead of you. So we've actually recently implemented some data loss prevention controls within our Workspace tenant. So let's take a look at them. I'll show you some stuff in the admin console, similar to how we did it a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So just give me a second. I'll bring this over here. You remember this, our admin console?
Yeah, admin console.
Homepage for administrators as they log in, can navigate into different sections. So we're going to take a look at where the data loss prevention controls exist and how you can create those. So we're going to navigate into security.
Makes sense, security.
And I'm going to have to log back in because Google is super conscious about their security. So give me 1 second as I log back in.
No problem.
For any day-to-day super admins within the Workspace environment, you'll be very familiar with their frequent logouts. Okay, so we're now at data protection. And this is the data protection home screen. It gives us a couple of visualizations right off the bat. So here, the main card here that you see, data protection insights. This is Google scanning your data for you if you choose to let it. And if you do want to allow Google to do that for you, there's a setting here at the bottom called Data Protection Insight Setting. This is off by default, so if you're not currently seeing this data or you have it off, you can turn it on. This is Google, again, just taking some proactive measures to start scanning your data and give you an idea of what kind of data exists within your Drive system already. So, for example, Google is recognizing that we have 6,100 plus documents that contain an email address, 28 of which are being shared externally. Okay. Now, this is reporting only. Google is not taking any action on these data sets. It does recommend some some rules that we can implement based on the data that it sees in the insights report. So if you wanted to go through some of the wizard stuff, you can use the recommended rules section here. But back to your cold sweat dreams last night. Let's see if we can make you feel a little bit better. So recently we implemented some controls specifically around social security numbers. So let me navigate into our rules section here. We can see we have two rules set up, one for Gmail and one for Drive. And these are looking for social security numbers, or these rules are looking for social security numbers. Okay. If I was to drill down into Drive, we can see we've had a recent violation. So this top card gives us some insights as to the number of violations, etc. Let me edit the rule and make it a little bit easier for you to see. So when creating these rules, we can give it any name that we want. I can scope this to specific groups or users or exclude certain groups and users within our Workspace tenant. For purposes of social security number, because it's such a sensitive data type, we do apply this to the entire organization. Our rule is basically saying anytime a Google Drive file is modified that contains a social security number, and that's this drop down here, and you can see there's a bunch of different detectors is what they call them. So there's a whole slew of different detectors that I can choose from, but we're going to stick with social security number. It also gives us, as administrators, the controls on the level of which Google's confidence kicks in, right? So Google, for our rules, needs to be almost 100% sure that the data string that they're scanning is a social security number. And that's the very likely range, right? So if I wanted to go the other route and say, catch anything that looks like a social security number, even if it's not, I would say very low confidence. Now, this could result in some false positives. So we've sort of adjusted ours based on the data types that we see. So we're going to stick with very likely. And then, we do have options for saying minimum unique matches, right? So there has to be at least one instance of a social security number, and it needs to match at least one. It needs to be unique at least one time and have at least one instance of that. Of course, you can raise or lower those as needed, or raise them as needed.
So this is you doing this setting, but how does it look like inside a document when you're working on it?
Excellent question. So you can see here we're blocking sharing and we are sending these to the Alert Center. But as an example, just to again make you feel a little bit better, if I was to go into a document here that had a fictitious social security number, and if this is anybody's social security number, I do apologize. But what we have here is a Google Doc. It has some information about me, about a potential customer or a client or an employee, and it does include my social security number. Now, Chris, do you notice anything different about this Google Doc?
Yeah, I'm seeing in the right-hand corner the share. It looks like sort of like a medieval shield.
That's exactly right. So this is your visual for your end users to say, you know what, there's something different about this Google document. What did I do? If I was to hover over this share button, it now gives me a little pop-up to say this document contains sensitive data. Okay. Now, if I was to go and try to share this document, because we are blocking external sharing, so I'm just going to put in my full Wursta email address here. I'm going to try to send this. And what happens is a little pop-up appears and says this item contains restricted content and cannot be shared outside of the organization.
Okay.
So me as the creator of this content or this document cannot share this document externally.
Okay. So this is cool. So question, what if I want not just like my social security number and my credit card like blocked, but what if I'm working on like a sensitive project with like a famous person with like a code name or something? Can we like add more data types to look out for, or can it also identify data that's already in the system?
That's a great question. So a couple pieces there. Yes. So when you implement these rules, it'll actually do a backward scan. So any data that already exists in Google Drive will be scanned. If a violation occurs or is flagged, say for a social security number, if there are external collaborators on that document already, they will automatically be removed. So yes, it does do a backward scan as well as going forward. Okay. I'm gonna exit out of this screen. And you also asked about the project code names. And we actually have one that we're working on together internally that's kind of highly sensitive. Yeah. So yes, and I trust this group, so we'll talk a little bit about it here. But Google does offer, and we looked at some of those CAN detectors, social security number and credit card number, et cetera. But within the Workspace data loss prevention rule set, you can create what they call custom detectors. So here in the detector screen, I have the option here for add detector. I have the option to create detectors based on a couple of different attributes. So I can do a regex, which I write a lot of, right? So really complex strings that you may need to scan for internally. Email address list, an IP address list, mostly used on the Gmail scanning side. But to your question, word lists. So we have a, sorry, I want to look at this one. So we have that project we were just talking about around that celebrity, Mr.
Yep, that celebrity we're working with. That is very polite and nice.
Yes. So we want to protect that project and the assets that we're creating around that project. So I came in here and I created a word detector for Project DeVito. And I've created a rule around that project or that word to say anytime that is found in Gmail or Drive, to send a warning on the Gmail side, also quarantine that message, as well on the Drive side to block that from being shared externally. Should any of those violations occur, administrators will be notified, somebody's wrist is going to be slapped, etc. You want to take a look at what that looks like?
Yeah, did you say the Gmail side?
On the Gmail side as well. So Gmail with the data protection rules are maturing the content compliance into data protection. So if we were to go into Gmail, I had a feeling you were going to ask about this one actually. So I actually brought up an example of what that will look like on the Gmail side. So here I'm going to attempt to send myself, my other account, an email about Project DeVito. I put that in the subject line, which probably was a no-no to begin with. And I put that keyword, that Project DeVito detector, in the body of the subject. Now what Gmail is doing is something called content highlighting. It's giving you as the composer, or me as the composer in this scenario, information saying what you're doing is not allowed to either reject it, redact it, etc. I can hover over the highlighted content and get a little message that's customizable by administrators to say, in this case, you are not permitted to discuss this project outside of Wursta.
Oh, okay.
And I get this I get this yellow banner here at the top. Now, if I was to take all of this stuff out, now you can see here it's in the subject line as well. All right, so I have the same detector here in the subject line. If I was to take all of that out, what will happen is in Gmail, it'll refresh in just a second and all of that stuff has gone away. So now I can send this email with confidence, knowing that it's going to get to my recipient.
Wow.
Now, if I was to send that with all of that keyword stuff in there, what will happen again is it'll go into quarantine and eventually be rejected by administrators.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Wow. Patrick, I got to admit, you're making me feel a lot better about going to sleep tonight. I feel like I'm not going to have as many nightmares. I feel like I can open a window and breathe some fresh air. I can sip a LaCroix and get a really nice, good sleep. So going back to our slide deck, the way you just helped me with my issue, is that the way that you would help someone who works with Wursta?
It's a great question. Every organization is different, but typically we recommend a multi-phased approach, and we'll do a couple of things within our security workshop sprints. The first is sharing remediation. So not only looking for sensitive data types, but really trying to get a gauge on all of the files that are shared in your domain externally. Recent example, we worked with a customer, not Project DeVito, not Danny DeVito, but we worked with a customer. We did an audit for their domain. We found over 200,000 files that were created internally by employees that were shared publicly on the internet.
Yikes.
The customer had no idea that this many files existed, and let alone shared on the internet. So well, we worked with that customer to implement some custom scripts. We were able to remove the sharing ACLs on those files and sort of level set them, right? So now we've sort of done the sharing remediation. We're confident that the files that we own are not being shared improperly. We'll then start on our data loss prevention sprint, right? So the first part of that is that classification. So determining what data points are important to the customer to scan. Almost always they include things like social security numbers and credit card numbers, but there could be something unique to your business that you'll want to scan for as well. Includes international detectors like NIN number in the EU. So we'll implement those controls. We'll roll out to a small group in core IT usually. We'll start to gather the data to make sure that our rules are not sort of producing a lot of false positives. We'll tweak as necessary, and then that last sprint we'll be applying that to the whole organization.
Wow. Okay. All right. So going to the next slide, I feel like we covered all there was to know about DLP. We enabled DLP in a Google Workspace. We talked about examples, how it's useful, maybe for a paranoid person, maybe for not. We talked about creating and applying rules, and we talked about what Wursta can offer for people who don't know how to manage their DLP. So with that, I feel like we can go and move to question and answer. But before we do, I feel like Emily has a few announcements that are Wursta related that she has to say.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. I just wanted to let everyone know we have a couple more events coming up. You can check those out at our resources page. I put that in the chat for you, and view any past recordings or any other ebooks, anything else like that we have. And your Wursta rep will be following up directly to talk more about that offering Patrick mentioned, that security workshop, and go through DLP settings, shadow IT, everything else like that. I do also have a very quick survey I just put in the chat. You guys could fill that out to let us know your feedback about today's presentation. It's only a couple questions. And then with that, we can get into Q&A.
Excellent.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily.
Of course.
Does anyone on the call who has a question? Go for it.
Yes. This slide is a little dark, so I'm going to go back a slide. My face isn't so dark.
You guys talked a little bit about the matching on the words and how there can be, it sounded like some strict and maybe some looser matching rules. I was just a little bit curious about that because I was thinking like I wouldn't want to accidentally catch a whole bunch of messages, but I wouldn't want to miss something because they misspelled DeVito or like didn't capitalize the V, for example.
It's a great question, and specifically on the word list detector. Capitalization doesn't matter as much, although misspellings would be something that you potentially would want to catch. So when you're building out that word list detector, having variations like that within your detector actually makes a lot of sense. And in this example, we don't have that, but you can see here we've added a couple of different variations of Project DeVito, Danny DeVito, DeVito by itself. But yes, the more that you can add to that to tighten that in terms of variations of words, the better that rule will protect on the word list section. The threshold level on the CAN detectors, that is, something that organizations, I go on all sides of the spectrum. We're both sides of the spectrum, right? So from low confidence all the way to that very likely, if you remember that. It really is what serves the business the most, right? And a lot of businesses choose to be overprotective, which will generate a lot of false positives. And just to, we didn't touch on this much here, but just to show you as administrators what that would look like on the back end. What happens when all of these things get flagged is you can have alerts go out to your administrators, of course, all of the automated actions that we just talked about, blocking and stuff like that. But if you choose to, you can also send each one of these alerts into your alert center, where you can then drill down even further on that incident, right? So here's one that was triggered for Danny DeVito, apparently. So we have some sort of file that contains the word DeVito. I assume it's some sort of celebrity book or something like that. But if I wanted to from here, I can view the document. I can, I can assign this alert to somebody. I can say it's in progress. This acts almost like a ticketing system for your security analysts or whomever is tapped to be your security analyst that day. So the alert center will help bubble up any of those false positives that may come up, and that will usually lead to some sort of modification of the rules, right? So things like social security number are very hard to detect and get 100% right, because it's at the end of the day just a 9-digit string or a 9-character string. So yes, I'll be the first to admit there are going to be some false positives, but using those detectors and using those thresholds are very important. Good question.
No, that makes sense. That's good to know that I can kind of flesh that out and squash them as they come up.
Absolutely. You can also use. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yes, please.
Oh, I have two other unrelated questions. Sorry.
Sure. April, hi. How are you?
Hi. So is there a way to set a custom warning message? So for example, if my organization sets up an alert for social security numbers or credit card numbers, could the warning be customized, say please contact your store manager, or, please visit this website to, submit this information or something along those lines?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So, and some of what you've seen today, you may, so the Gmail part of the data protection is rolling out. So you may not have this yet, but to your question, yes, 100% you can. So let me just go in and edit this rule. So I'm going to click through a couple of screens here, right? And we're going to get to this. What you're asking about content highlighting, that's that real-time alert that I showed in the Gmail example. So that message is completely customizable. And that is, to your question, April, exactly how I typically see organizations roll this out. For, this content was highlighted, this content was flagged. For more information, please contact the help desk, right?
Gotcha.
So yes, this is 100% customizable. 1-800-ASK-PDP, which is going to be a little alter ego. So yes, that is completely customizable, as is the when you're using word lists. So we'll activate that. So the word list, which we talked a little bit about, if I was to go into here, I can also edit this, right? So this is the highlighted part of that content highlighting, right? So you get that yellow message at the top, and that's where we just edited to put the help desk information in. The words itself that gets highlighted, you can customize that wording as well. So in this example, we said you're not permitted to talk about this, but yes, you can customize that. Question.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, what would it look like if we set up a social security number alert what would it look like if someone from outside of the organization emailed someone inside of my organization with a message that contains that flagged data, either via email or say chat, for example?
Great question. So with the upcoming, the changes to Gmail data protection, right? All of that currently lives in content compliance now, and you can set that up to be outbound or inbound. And the same thing on the Gmail side of things. So I could say anytime a message is received that has a social security number, to take a certain kind of action. The actions are the same. You don't get that content highlighting, right? Because it's not coming outbound or it's not going outbound. But the inbound side of it, I can say anything that contains a social security number automatically add to the quarantine. I can choose what quarantine I want to set these up at or have these filtered to. And then the quarantine themselves, you would set up alerts within the quarantine to say, hey, a new message has been quarantined. You can also have those go to the alert center. So yes, you can catch inbound as well, which just as important as making sure that your users aren't sharing things externally. A lot of times organizations don't want to get anything internally. They don't want to get anything inbound that has that sensitive data either, because that also puts them on the hook for that data. So it's a great question. Yes, you can quarantine on the way in as you can on the way out. Great question.
Awesome, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Yes, we talked a little bit about the investigation tool, and there's some roadmap stuff. There's some things that we've asked for, not so much roadmap stuff, but other things that we'll probably see with data loss in the near future. Well, hopefully we see in the near future. Things like combining data loss with some context-aware access rules, which we talked a little bit about last week. So doing a combination of a couple of things, right? So saying that you must be on this IP address, working from this location, and using this specific computer in order to do certain things. Not quite there yet. Those are things that I know have been talked about within the ecosystem. So yeah, but it's super powerful right out of the box. Again, tweaking your rules to make sure that they fit, and adjusting the levels to make sure you're not getting too many false positives. Will be somewhat of a work in progress, and if you choose to engage with Wursta, it's something that we would absolutely help with. But with that said, I think we're at the 30-minute mark, so I'll hand it back to Emily and or David or Chris. But
Yeah.
For me, thank you all for joining. I hope you all got something out of this. I look forward to the next one.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thanks
helping, Patrick.
everyone. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Patrick. We'll
So-
follow up with y'all. And we appreciate you coming. Hope to see you again at future events. Thanks.
Thanks.
Everyone.